And we're going to talk about if Champions League is going to hurt Spurs for next season. What do you reckon, Brains?
Well, it's a tricky one. Like,
that was a big sigh.
I mean, I personally, like, I don't see the point in going into a massive European competition, especially with the new structures of competitions where there's so much more games. I don't really see the benefit if you're as early as we are in the build. You're almost asking for kind of cannon fodder in that way. I do see the financial benefit, obviously, and I do see, like, like there was a thing that Ange's point of view of like mentality of club, and when he speaks to players coming into the club, he tells them things like, "When I'm done, you won't recognize this club again." And it really it seemed to work and start players coming to us rather than European giants. Right now, it's a big part of that. He isn't selling them on Champions League, but he can say, forget Champions League all you want, but Champions League is a hugely watched competition worldwide, right? It's a massive brand. It's big money coming in. Players see that as the height, the ceiling of the game. Like, unless you're playing in a World Cup semi-finals or whatever, getting to a Champions League semi-final and final is like the biggest thing that you can do in football in many ways. So it isn't something to be sniffed at, but I just think we maybe have to believe in the process towards getting a team that has 24 players where you could change anyone and they're as good as each other. You know what I mean? Like, City have such an unbelievable squad. Arsenal don't have that squad yet, but they have built over 500, 600 million to be able to get in and then just bring one player in a season. We're nowhere near it. I fear, even though I think it is good for playing young players and giving youth a chance in European games, I think Villa and I think other teams come into the Europa League, and I think they see it as something they can win. When we're talking about using kids in that for me is saying we're not really going into that to win it. We're just going in to give kids use maybe a Carabao Cup or something, but I just don't see really that you can go in and be competitive in those competitions if your squad isn't ready. Like, that's for me. I would just rather like us to focus on getting either a FA Cup, like getting high up in the league, but have a good season so that we can actually see the foundations that we can go and compete. And I know people argue me with like, well, the structure is that actually you might only need 2 wins and you can get you can get to the quarters, and it's like, that's not really what I'm saying. I want to see the squad built before we kind of move on to the biggest challenges, or else it's just going to be that thing where we get to the final and we did need a few more things before we were ready for that, So
but Brains, what would you say? What would you say to the fans that would say that if you get into the Champions League, regardless how you're doing it, it gives you more money to work with for rebuilding your squad?
I mean, it's true. It is true, and that's a valid argument. It's I have to be confident that the club is going to spend the money, is going to use that money to back Ange. And in the past, we haven't used the money 100% to back a manager. Like, we got to a final and they didn't use money to back Poch, So for me, it's like, it's always this problem of, do I believe, like, it's great bringing money in, but do I believe they're going to spend the money well? So I think we are building, and look at the budgets of what we're looking to spend. Looks like we're kind of not really building a championship title team. It looks like we're kind of going to try build going for top 4 every year team. That's just my opinion. Even the names of like the realistic names that we've been linked with, it doesn't really seem that we're going out to be a top challenge.
And that's back to small club mentality.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They have to behave. You can't change a club from the bottom up, which is what they're asking. You have to change from top down. That's how general world economics work. Change comes from top down.
Yeah. Johnny, do you think that no Champions League will hurt Spurs next season?
Look, financially, you can make the argument. Daniel Levy certainly will. He will use the usual yardstick. Unfortunately, we're not in the Champions League. Therefore, our budget is reduced. Therefore, we have to sell to buy. We know the script, okay? I'm not interested in the script. Look, Arsenal spent money. They weren't in the Champions before they were in the Champions League that season. Chelsea have spent big. They weren't in the Champions League. Aston Villa spent really big. They weren't in the Champions League. So it's not an excuse that washes for me. For me, Ange's record in European football is quite shocking. I know it was Celtic.
I mean, he's been playing with Celtic, though. I mean, I remember a game he played Real Madrid off the park.
He played well for 20 minutes. Yeah, I've seen it all. Right? Yeah, but
I've seen it all.
They missed so many chances.
Yeah.
Listen. I heard it all. Right, but at the end of the day, you lost. Right. So what I would say to you is, with this squad, and I still want to get away from this bloody thing that they keep going on about. He's not a first team member. He'll never make the first 11. Forget it. 21st century football is about the squad. It's not about the first team. You need to have a squad. This squad is not ready for Champions League. Okay, let's go into the Europa League. There's no drop down this season from the Champions League. So we know exactly who we got to beat. And I'm looking at it now and I'm seeing Roma, potentially Newcastle, or I don't think Chelsea will be in it because they're breaching FIFA rules on expenditure already. So it might be Newcastle and maybe Lazio, right? Those are the teams I'm seeing.
Porto as well, yeah.
Porto, right? So, but what I'm saying to you is, I believe that we could win this competition. There's no drop down from the Champions League. It is what it is. Okay. Second of all, the fringe players, we played the least amount of games this season that we have done in 19 years. So there's more games. We need squad. That means the fringe players are now going to have an opportunity to be bled in and show what they can do, perform in these games. And to back what Brains is saying, I'm not saying going out and playing, 16-year-old kids like Mikey Moore, who's been played, to say, look, there's a future for you here. That's what that's about. But to maybe give a Phillips or a Donnelly, minutes on the bench to come on, to play the game. Because once you've qualified, more or less, you're through to that next round. And we can play those games. It means if we are in the Champions League, you have to play your strongest team every single week and then go into the league. And this, we can play a mixture of first team, fringe, players he wants to see and get a feel for it. I think it's beneficial. Second of all, the prize money has been raised significantly this year, in line with not only the extra game that we're going to have now, but by also the prize money. So I think all in all, this is where we're at. This is what we deserve because the league's told us so. But this is our best opportunity to develop the squad, give players a chance, and actually have something which I want to see as us winning something. And this is a winnable trophy. I believe this is winnable. I'm looking at the teams and I'm saying, you know what? This is winnable. Look at them yourselves, guys. When we come off the channel, if you're watching this now, go and look at the teams and tell me if you think on your day with our best team that we could not beat every single one of those teams. And I'm going to go into the season next season with the belief that that's possible. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, no. Another positive thing about the Europa League, there's going to be no dropouts from the Champions League anymore.
Just said, yeah,
you just said that. Sorry, I missed that. So, but in terms of is it going to hurt us or not? I don't see a reason why it should hurt us. With the amount of players that we need to sell, with the money that's available, with all the money coming into the club right now, it really shouldn't hurt us. And for people to say that we can attract better players inside the Champions League than outside the Champions League, I mean, all you need to do is look at the caliber of player we've been able to bring in while not being in the Champions League. You look at the Mickey van der Vens, the Kuti Romeros, and there's endless amount of players that you can talk about. So I mean, yes, fine, everyone would like to be in the Champions League, everyone likes to dine at the top table, we all do, but there are a lot of values being in the Europa League. I completely agree with you, Johnny. It's a competition that we can 100% win next season. And in terms of the caliber of player coming into this football club, I don't think it should change the targets that we're going for this summer. Don't know what you think.
Well,
Sim.
I think naturally there are going to be some targets where if you have a bit more wiggle room, maybe you go for, and if you don't have that wiggle room, Like, look, at the end of the day,
do you
it's an
think
extra 100 million.
But do you think that we're going to spend more money on a particular player if we're in the Champions League or out the Champions League? Whether
There
we're in
might be a player where if we got Champions League and we got, let's say, the extra 50, 100 million, we can say, actually, we might be able to push the boat out a bit more for that player. And if we're not in it, we'll have to go for plan B or C.
But we've never done that in the history of this football club, whether we're in the Champions League or out the Champions League. We're not going to go spend 100 million on a Declan Rice if we're in the Champions League.
I'm just saying there might be. So I'm not saying there is definitely that scenario. I'm just saying there might be some scenarios where on certain targets we might have a plan A if we were in the Champions League, where if we had an extra 50 million, we say, okay, we've got a bit more wiggle room. We can actually push the boat out a bit more. But because we're for that specific player, well, I don't think he's going to be able to. We're not going to be able to obtain it. I don't think it's going to be a massive issue. It shouldn't be financially. I do think, look, naturally, when you get an extra 100 million, there's going to be a bit more wiggle room. Without that extra 100 million, that wiggle room isn't going to be there. So I'm not saying we should be running a tight ship just because of that. I'm not going to have any money to spend. That would be ridiculous. I'm just saying, if we're in the Champions League, I would like to think, or I would guess, there'll probably be a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to certain prices when signing players or not. But apart from that, as you say, look, I think the days where Champions League was a be all and end all when it came to attracting players, I think is long gone, in my opinion. I think back in maybe, the late 2000s, when we were getting Champions League first time, essentially back in like 2010, in those kind of days, I think Champions League was a much bigger deal when it came to getting players in, people seeing your club as prestigious, all this kind of thing. Now you're seeing clubs like Bournemouth compete with clubs like AC Milan because they offer more money. And, it's not like Bournemouth offering Champions League football or anything like that. It's purely because Premier League, there's a lot of money in it. That's where that's where it's at. That's where players want to play. That's where all the attention is. I don't think when it comes to joining Tottenham or joining a Champions League team in another league, I think there's not much. I don't think it hurts us too much. I think us not being in the Champions League, teams are still going to want to come to us because we're probably going to offer better wages. Now, obviously, when it comes to competing against the top three, it's going to be quite difficult. But that would have been difficult anyway. Even if we weren't in the Champions League, it would have been very difficult to compete with them to sign players, regardless. So I don't think it hurts us too much in terms of our standing when it comes to will teams join us or not. Sorry, will players join us or not? I think obviously it doesn't help. It doesn't help us, but I don't think it hurts us too much. I think it's probably minimal how much it would decrease our standing. And I think, as I say, we're a very attractive club at the moment. You see, obviously, the new stadium that's bringing a lot of money, and I think clubs see us as a big club at the moment. Obviously, we did make the Champions League final back in I know it was 2019, but people still remember that, and I still think that we're seen as a big club to join. And obviously, being in the Premier League, we offer a lot of money. When it comes to playing wise, being in Europa League, look, people say that Europa League better chance of winning it. The fact of the matter is, the barefaced fact is we've gone further in the Champions League than we have gone in the Europa League. That is the reality. As well, I mean, obviously we won the UEFA Cup back in the 80s, but since it turned into Europa League back in, I think, 2008, we haven't made it past the quarterfinals. And I think we only made it there once. I think it was Basel. So I don't really, I mean, I'd like to think if we take it really seriously, it's definitely a competition we can win 100%. But we've been, in years gone by, we've had good teams.
Dreams do come true, Sim.
I'm just saying, in years gone by, we've had good teams in that competition, and it hasn't been the case. We've gone out early, and we haven't, maybe we haven't taken it seriously, or I don't know what it is, or we've rested players, or whatever. But hopefully, if we do take it seriously, obviously it is a competition we can seriously win. I do think Thursday, Sunday isn't great. I do think, as much as people say it's the same as Wednesday, Saturday, I don't really see it that way, because when it's Wednesday, Saturday, I still think the travel time doesn't, I think, affect you as much. I think when you're playing the game at the start of the weekend, whereas you're constantly playing on a Sunday all the time, you only have one rest day. It can be a bit of an issue. So I think that does have a bit of a drain on the squad, but that's something you're going to have to deal with. Hopefully, if you rotate properly in the group stages, you can get by. Look, I've seen teams have successful Europa League campaigns and successful league campaigns as well. So it's something you can accommodate. It's just going to be that little bit more problematic, I feel. But that is something we're going to have to deal with.
You got Tuesday as well, haven't you? You got Tuesday, Saturday, which is that
Tuesday, Saturday. You go the extra day,
Yeah.
which is obviously that does happen a lot. So, do I think it will hurt us? I don't think it's going to hurt us too much. I don't think it's going to make too much difference in terms of our ambitions, in terms of what we can achieve. I think it's just as much. If anything, we can probably more chance of winning a trophy. But I don't think it helps us. Essentially, I don't subscribe to the opinion that being Europa League helps us. In my opinion.
Yeah, and when you're attracting players that say, oh, they only want Champions League football, we don't want those kind of players. We want players that are going to grow with this team, and
Correct.
we want players that are going to buy into the project that we have here, not just come here just because we're in the Champions League. So I think that's another factor. But anything you guys want to say before we end the show?
Oh no, just like, you would maybe get a couple of players in who are like happy to get knocked out by Fulham in the first round. Listen, look, I still haven't forgiven Ange for that. 9 substitution and 9 changes. We were winning 9 subs. Who makes 9 subs to a team? Even if you've got a youth or a kids team, no one makes 9 subs and expects to win a game. That was our one chance, I felt, of going for a trophy, going for
Who won
glory.
it, Johnny?
Huh?
Who won it?
Well, we know who won it.
Who won it?
It was City, right?
Exactly. So it wasn't a real... I mean, were we going to beat City?
There. I'd rather be there. I'd rather keep the dream alive.
We lost to them in the FA Cup.
Yeah, 1-0. We played well. Not.
As we did on Tuesday, we gave it our all. We just fell short just that final in that little bit.
What about the game away from home? When we went there with Ben Davis and Emerson as our centre-backs, we all feared the worst. And lo and behold, what happened? We got a 3-3 draw. Who would have written that? So dreams can come true. I'm going to end positively. Tonight, it's the Spurs under-21 final.
Come on.
It's on Spurs Play. And if you're going down, I'm going down tonight. I'm sure there's quite a few of us going down.
Yeah, I can't make it in
tonight.
the end.
Our future's bright. The future's lily white. There's a lot of talent coming through. Hopefully, they'll make it through to that first team. That's a positive. And also, our others were in the Premier 2, the other Cup game against Chelsea. I'm not sure when that's going to go ahead, but there is positivity. We're in Europe. It could have been worse. We lost Harry Kane. Come on, let's end positive.
Up the Spurs. And you know what, Johnny? We could have a second cup final for the under-21s as well if we beat Chelsea on Sunday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which I'm sure you'll be at as well. But actually, in the comments, they've just corrected us because actually it was Liverpool that won the Carabao Cup this year with Chelsea in the final.
Sorry.
So maybe we could have won it then. Maybe I take that back.
Sorry, I don't know. I'm City. I can't get out City mode. We
would have beaten Liverpool's kids.
We couldn't beat Brighton's. Brighton had 14 players missing, and we still couldn't beat them.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Thanks for having me, guys.
No, thanks for coming on, Johnny.
I would like to end on a positive as well, and that positive would be.
You're all mudded.
F Arsenal.
My battery's about to die.
When you're talking about the weak mind state, I say that Arsenal have one of the weakest mind states amongst fans that you'll ever see. That they needed Spurs to hand them a trophy because they couldn't do it themselves. They were going to banter us for us. We are so in their heads. That's the way you need to see it. Like,
I'd love to have a season like a crappy season like they've had this season. I look forward to that next year. I would enjoy that.
In Big Ange we trust, Johnny, eh?
Yes, exactly.
But listen, they've had 5 years. Arteta has had nearly 600 million spent on his squad. He's been allowed to change entirely his squad. This has been a huge journey for them, and they still can't win the league. It's not going to happen next season. This was it. So, like, for their entire journey to end with, please, Spurs, win us a league. That is so incredibly pathetic. That's how I saw it. And I was actually going to use, if we did win that game, and they always tried to make me, I was always just going to go, oh, yeah, like that trophy that we gave you. We gave you. That's how pathetic that club is. So that's the way I would like to end. Let's just all remember that fact.
Damn right.
Yeah, look, I could argue that, but I just can't be asked at this point. I just would like, I would like to stick on your narrative on that one. But thank you, Brains and Johnny, for coming and joining us today. No problem at all. Big up to everyone in the chat as well. We'll see you all very soon. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.